All right. Welcome, everyone. No change of setting. You are getting a look of my dining room in South Carolina. Sorry, don't have a tasting onesie on. Sorry, Lindsay. Sorry, Rob. But it is, it still is, but it's 83 degrees here in Colombia right now. So there's no fucking way I'm putting that on. Putting on a onesie right now. So yeah, I'm actually sweating. So sorry, you're just gonna have to deal with my t-shirt today. Anyways, welcome to the fifth tasting of Beauj Box 2026. Welcome to the second month. So we did the first 4 weeks. Now we're moving into the second block, the middle of it, which is the week 5 through 8. So we're gonna kick it off with, let's go. Sorry, my label's a little jacked up today. I don't know if you can see that. It's not really focusing. I don't know why. But anyways, it is a 2023 Yohan Lardy Le Deschamps Chenas is what we're tasting today. All right, you all have access to this map, but you know, if you look at the map, you all know where Beaujolais is, so I won't go over that again. But you all got the map. Attachment number 1 is the map. Attachment number 2 is named Beaujolais. That's where all the crew maps. So it tells you where Chenas is. It's that kind of a teal, aqua blue. I don't know what to call that color is, but yeah, it's just underneath Julianas. So Centimore, Julianas, and Chenas is where we are. And if you go to the attachment number 3. This is the soil map of all the crew Beaujolais, and as you can see, we were in Centimore and Juliana's last 2 weeks, and we had some different soil types, and even just looking at this map, you can tell, starting from Chenas is really when you start to see this granite start to come in. And then if you go to attachment number 4, this is the Chenas and different ludi, broken out by ludi. One thing that you will notice on the left of that attachment number 4 Chenas soil map, you will see that kind of green space. So that's still very much of a forest. That's a wooded area. I mean, there are some smatterings of little vineyards and ludi thrown in there, but it's mostly just all woods, forested area. In fact, the name Chenas comes from, oh, by the way, I drew a little red arrow there, but that is actual Ludi de Deschamps. That's where this wine comes from, just in case you were wondering where within Chenas this wine or the fruit for this wine comes from. But Chenas is the smallest cru of them all, both in terms of the area under vine as well as the amount of wine that's made. As I mentioned on the left, there's all this wooded area, but the name Chenas actually comes from it's named after an ancient oak forest that used to exist here. In French, chêne or chêne, Chene, is actually French for oak. So Chenas means a place of oak trees. So this used to be all forested area, but you know, one of the barons or one of the nobility, Philip V, to be exact, actually order. So this was cleared out. Old oak forest was then used to be covered by oak forest and all of that, but then it was cleared out by the Romans and then the local monks by the order of Philip V. He ordered this area to be cleared out because he just wanted vines to exist here. He saw potentials of this area producing delicious wines. So he deforested this whole area and then established all these vineyards. Kind of terrible, I suppose, the fact that the area had to get deforested, which is actually a pretty common thing that happened around the globe. Anywhere you see vineyards, oftentimes it was forested and had to be deforested in order to be turned into vineyards. But anyways, hundreds years later, here we are tasting wines from this area. And, you know, maybe call it a part of suggestion, but for me, whenever I taste Chenas, there is always this like a little bit of this like a pencil shaving, a little bit of like that kind of woodsy forested, kind of like earthy, like or wood shaving kind of a thing going on. So again, it may be just a psychosomatic placebo kind of a thing, power of suggestion to playing tricks on my brain. But I always feel like the Chenas, that's one of those things. If I were to blind these different crews of Beaujolais, that's what I would look for. Or if I got that, I would think that it was Chenas. I mentioned this earlier, but this is where you really start to see the granite start to come into an influence. Even today, when we get to tasting this wine, we'll talk about it. But the granitic minerality on this thing is quite pronounced, which is awesome. Which is exactly what we want out of our Beaujolais, especially Cru Beaujolais. But it's a little bit different than the rest in terms of the kind of granite that exists here. So in Fleury and Morgon, there's this kind of a big bedrock of granite that exists underground. But the here soil type is mostly kind of very coarse, sandy soil. So it's weathered granite. So it starts out as a big, granite rock, and then over time, it got broken up, decomposed, and turns into this kind of tiny little particles, particulate matters to the size of sand. So yes, it is made out of granite, but the soil type itself is quite sandy here rather than clay or other things that you may see in other places. This kind of tiny kind of granite sand is basically what makes Chenas unique. And this is why Chenas is capable of producing really these kind of like age-worthy, mineral-driven Beaujolais. Oftentimes I find Chenas to be one of the more tannic crews of them all, or one of the crews. Because, I mean, if you think about it, right, like there's a sand here, the soil type is sand, the particulate matter size is the sand, so which means there's a great drainage here. So there's not a whole lot of water retention. Clay would hold on to a lot of water, right? But there's sand doesn't. So there's great drainage. So that much water sticking around, there's not much water entering the fruit, so really a lot of big concentration, which also means the roots really have to dig deep to get to any kind of nutrients. Again, that sand is also made out of granite, lacking a lot of organic matter, any kind of fertility in the soil. So again, really infertile, really poor, again, meaning the roots really have to dig deep into the ground to get to the water, get to the nutrients, and as we all know, as well, I've talked about over and over again, good wines kind of like humans. when you coddle them too much, it doesn't make for a very resilient, good, characterful person. You gotta, people have to go out there, try at things, fail, learn their lessons, and people who've gone through some struggles in their lives, I always feel like make for much more interesting, more resilient and people, and wine and the vines are exactly like that. So the fact that this is granite sand in a very infertile soil grown like that is one of the reasons why it makes for this really kind of granitic, mineral-driven, tannic kind of wine that is age-worthy. And also on top of that, most vineyards here, vineyard sites are all south-facing vineyards. So on a slope, there's some. And if you look at that soil mat, the attachment number 4, you kind of see the topographical kind of outline, like where the slopes are, and then you can see that most of them, there are hills running through here, so they're all kind of on a slope, south-facing, which means ton of sunlight, helps with the ripening as well. So all of that again makes for all those combined makes for a crew that is capable of producing really layer, complex, concentrated, and age-worthy wines. Due to its size and low production, because it's the smallest one, you don't find a whole lot of Chenas on the market. Chenas is actually one of my favorites. I really do like Chenas quite a bit. So don't sleep on them. So whenever you do see Chenas on the market, I highly recommend you try it. I think in general, Chenas that have had has always been pretty high quality. I've never had Chenas that I thought it was kind of like kind of entry level. I've always found it to be quite well made, like a serious wine. So yeah, don't sleep on Chenas if you see one. check it out. It's one of those bottles also that, great for laying down for a few years, forget about it for a few years, and later on you come to find a nice surprise years down the road. Here's a little wine trivia, information that confuses a lot of people. But the town of Chenas, so most of these crews are named after the town, the namesake town. So like Moulin-Avant has a town of Moulin-Avant inside. Actually, Moulin-Avant, I just fucked that up. You'll see what I mean. But anyway, Fleury has a town of Fleury inside. Bruy has a town of Bruy inside. It's all named after the main town inside that crew, except for Chenas. So the town of Chenas is actually in the appellation of Moulin-Avant, because over the years, the appellation kind of demarcation lines have moved. So the town of Chenas is actually in Moulin-Avant, meaning if you ever find a bottle of wine that's made from the vineyards right around or in the town of Chenas, it is actually Moulin-Avant, because the town of Chenas is actually in Moulin-Avant. It's not Chenas. So yeah, I know it's very confusing. Not that you would ever know that just by looking at the bottle that it's made from vineyards right around Chenas. But I may say something about made from winery. It may say something if you're ever reading the back label or something, and then you may find that the winery is in Chenas, but then it's making Moulin-Avant. It's because that reason. Yes, it's confusing, and yes, it is so damn French. But yeah, so one of those random, probably useless wine fact. All right, let's talk about who makes this. If you check out attachment number 5, you see that young gentleman pushing a manual kind of a plow up the hill there. That's Yohan Lardy. He's a young, energetic. I've never met him, but I know some people who have met him, and then they all talk about how gregarious and outgoing and kind of a full of life. And I think a lot of his kind of there's this idea the winemaker's energy gets transferred into the wine, but I feel like a lot of the wines that I've had from him, I'm a big fan of his wines, all have this kind of like a really energy, like a very energetic kind of vibe in the wine. It's not a dead serious wine. It's very kind of like a bright, ton of energy, alive feeling kind of a wine. He's a 5th generation winemaker. His dad, Lucien Lardy, is a pretty well-known Fleury producer, and so as you can imagine, he grew up with the wine. His dad is a pretty well-known winemaker in this region. He grew up in Fleury, grew up surrounded by vines. So all of his life, he's been pretty much in wine, and he's never done anything different. He struck out on his own, and so in 2012 was Yohan's first vintage that he made on his own. So I mean, we're talking about what, 15 years, 2012, right? Yeah, just less than 15 years, 14 years. So current spectrum of things, not the oldest producer, but yeah. So the young generation, the next generation, that's kind of taking over and doing their own thing. He's not certified, but practices organic farming. Started with 2 hectares of vines. I believe he leased that from his dad, but now he farms about 7 hectares. And the grand spectrum of things is not very big, but to do everything himself, he farms it all himself. As you can see, he's out there plowing the land. I mean, he's a even on the front label it says Yohan Lardy Vigneron. He's a vigneron in a true sense, meaning he's out in the field actually farming the land, touching the soil, tending to vines, and then also making the wine himself. He makes wines in other crews as well. So he makes wine in Moulin-Avant, Fleury, Chenas, which is what we have today. He also makes Beaujolais Blanc. In fact, I think it was our second Beauj Box 2022. Yeah, second Beauj Box. We actually feature his Beaujolais Blanc. So this is the second time Yohan is making an entrance in our Beauj Box, but today we are featuring his Chenas. All right, what is this wine? This is a 100% hand harvested Gamay from tiny little plot. It's about a quarter of a hectare of a plot in the Ludite of Les Deschamps. Planted back in 1948, so we're talking about almost 80-year-old vines. Grown on soil of granite, quartz. There's some manganese in the soil as well. We'll talk more about manganese later, not today, but in Moulin Avant. Yeah, so the manganese is essentially toxic to the vines, but because it kind of limits the growth of the vines, that toxicity actually makes reduces the yield and increases the concentration. So yes, a little bit of poison. What is the old saying? Like the poison is in dosage. So yeah, a little bit of that poison actually makes for a better wine. So this is a manganese-rich granite, quartz-filled soil. By the way, it's interesting kind of reading while I was reading about the soil type here. Another place that has sandy, granitic, full of quartz and some manganese. Oh, I don't know actually manganese, but at least the granite and the quartz is actually Leo Eraso's vineyards in Itata in Chile. There's always a lot of a comparison between those Pais vines and the style of wines that are made from that, like Pipeños to the Beaujolais. So it's interesting to kind of see that granitic, volcanic soil, quartz present, sandy soil. I mean, all of that is essentially is the southern part of Chile, which is interesting, which makes you think, maybe Gamay could do well there. Anyways. So this wine is a whole cluster semi-carbonic maceration, very classic traditional fermentation from this area for 20 days at low temperature using only the native yeast, and then he ages it for 8 more months in neutral barrels. So we're talking about semi-carbonic, so in terms of distinguishing one from another, learning from how the winemaking technique and different things affects the final style. Now we're moving into now we're talking about whole cluster semi-carbonic, and then 8 months in neutral barrel as well. 2 grams of sulfites added just before bottling, which is really nothing. So we're talking about pretty much 0-0. So I don't even remember how long ago this was. This is quite a few years back, maybe like 7. Yeah, 6 to 8 years ago. I remember doing a sulfite testing with a producer, and he basically had me taste wines with no sulfites added, and then we increased it by 2 grams each time. 2 grams, 4 grams, 6 grams, 8 grams, 10 grams. And really all the way up until 6 grams, so basically up until about 5 grams, you couldn't really tell a whole lot of difference. Like 2 grams versus 4 grams, yes, I could make an argument if I really want to split hair, but like, okay, I can see it being a little more quote unquote clean, a little less wild. But it really was starting from like 6 grams that I start to see the noticeable kind of difference in wine, especially compared to the 0 gram, 0-0 control wine. So the fact that he's only adding 2 grams here is essentially nothing. I'm willing to bet that if you were to drink Yohan Lardy in Beaujolais or in France in general or in Paris, that would be completely 0-0. Even that 2 grams was at which is a very kind of a happening trend in Beaujolais, is at the suggestion of the importer that they put a little bit of sulfites on the wine just for the voyage, because importers don't necessarily want to deal with don't want to take any chances in terms of shipping the wines and anything funny happening inside the bottle during shipment. But even then, he's probably pushing back quite a bit, so that's why he is adding only 2 grams. But that's what my guess would be. But what I'm trying to say is this is near 0-0. 2 grams is pretty much nothing. Very small scale, just over 100 cases produced, so we're talking about a very, very small production. Chenas that's coming out, but yeah, we're lucky enough to get it in this year. So here we go. All right, let's taste the wine. Let me pull up the grid. All right, start with the appearance. Um, oh, by the way, this wine has gotten light filtration. It was never fine, but it does get a tiny bit of a very light filtration before bottling. All right, clarity. I mean, I'll call this wine clear, but you can tell this wine hasn't been fine. Yeah, it's not like completely translucent, but yeah, for all intents and purposes, I would still call this clear. Intensity. Now we're getting a little more color here, right? Like I wouldn't go all the way to calling this deep, but I would definitely call this medium. I can kind of see the colors through, but not really. So yeah, I'm gonna call this one a medium color oof. I'm gonna call this ruby for the most part, but there's some bluish kind of a tinge to it. Maybe even touch of garnet, which is a pretty, yeah, it's not just a pure kind of a ruby here. There's something else going on here, maybe like an orangish kind of hue coming in. So yeah, I'm gonna call this like ruby with a little bit of a coppery hue thrown in. And no other observations, no sediments, no bubble, nothing like that. All right, let's get to the notes. This one is clean, this one is sound, and also smells awesome. Intensity. So I'm gonna pull it from here. I'm smelling it here. So like, that's like at least 2, maybe 3 inches off the glass. So I'm gonna call this medium plus intense aromas. Ooh, what do I get? Here you go. I get some violet. I almost always get violet with any Beaujolais, any Gamay really, but particularly Beaujolais Gamay. So definitely get some violet here. Some like that kind of bluish, purplish flower. No green fruit, no citrus, no stone fruit, no tropical. Maybe you can convince me that there's a little bit of like a red, like a black raspberry if I were to put any like red fruit in it, but really I get more of the black fruit. And this is what happens when you start really getting into that granite, unless you are also in a full carbonic, semi-carbonic, on a granite rich soil, you tend to get a lot more of these kind of blacker kind of expression. So it makes sense. But yeah, to me, this is like a blackberry, bramble, black cherry. Yeah, a lot of black fruit. Maybe touch of like a red fruit. Like I said, black raspberry, kind of like that cross between a red raspberry and like a blackberry. But yeah, mostly the black fruit is what I get here. Nature of the fruit, really fresh. Really ripe. There's nothing underripe. There's nothing overripe. Very good. Herbaceous. Again, I don't get any herbaceous like leafy green stuff or herbal, but this also goes back to kind of what I was saying earlier. Again, it may be, you know, my mind playing tricks on my brain, but like there's a little bit of that kind of like the pencil shaving. Like Chenas definitely gets this, you know, because of the name. Like I always get a little bit of this kind of woodsy, earthy kind of a thing with Chenas, and I definitely get it here. Like get a little bit of like, if you ever like, you know, I don't know if you're one of those kids that smell it like, you know, after you shave your pencils and you like take off the top and then you smell that like the pencil shaving. Like there's definitely a little bit of that going on here for sure. No spice. Maybe you can convince me. I could be convinced maybe there's a little bit of like a turn or two of like a pepper, but in general, not really. Mostly really fruit, and then the minerality. This is granite all over. I mean, just like the crushed granite, crushed rock. Yeah, just the minerality running through the entire thing. Any secondary? No yeast, no MLF, no oak. Yeah, no, it did spend 8 months, but those are all very neutral old barrels where there's no new oak on this thing. There's no sign of new oak on this wine. Maybe, you know, that pencil shaving could be, you know, interpreted as like a little bit of like a coriander, nutmeg kind of a thing, but to me, it's still a much more pencil shaving than it is spices. No tertiary here, so there's still very much a fresh. This is 2023, so we've gotten like 3 years of age on this thing, but still nothing is crossing over into tertiary. We're still very much in the primary, very fresh, very ripe, black fruit driven kind of thing with the pretty flowers. Just ton of granite influence here that I see, and then a little bit of that kind of pencil shaving thing that got going on. All right, let's go to the palette. Oh, hello. This one is dry. This one is bone dry. Acidity. It's got a good acid right here, right? Like, yeah, I'm gonna call this like a bordering a medium plus right now. Definitely high end of medium, low end of medium plus. I'm gonna call this like medium plus acid. And here's what I was talking about, Chenas, because of all that infertile, granitic, sandy soil that exists here. I mean, it's got some tannin, it's got some grip here. It's probably one of the most tannic ones that we've had so far this year. And this is very typical of a Chenas. I mean, unless you get into full carbonic Chenas, even then it still has some tannin. But especially if you're going into semi-carbonic, a lot of like extended maceration Chenas, you're definitely gonna get some tannin. But there's definitely some grip here. Yeah, I feel it everywhere on my front, in the north. It's like bordering on medium plus, but high end of medium. I'm gonna call this medium. Alcohol, I don't know, feels like 13%. A little bit hotter than what I thought it was gonna be, but it also may be the temperature that's here. Also, my back label is jacked, so here you go, 13%. So yeah, that's right down the middle. Medium. Body. It's about also medium as well. I'm gonna call this about 2% milk, lower than medium. Most of it I'm talk about flavor intensity. I actually don't. So full transparency here. This is a bottle that was returned back to me after sending it to Texas. I got a notice from FedEx saying that bottles were damaged. They broke one bottle and decided to ship all the other rest of 11 back. But instead of sending it back in a insulated, protected box, they put it all in a. They wrapped each bottle in one single layer of bubble wrap and threw them all in a trash bag, and then threw them in an uninsulated box. So, and then this was all during that kind of crazy ice storm or cold front that came through most of US. So there was definitely a sign of kind of like a freeze damage to these bottles when they came. So I don't know if it's because of that. I do remember this wine being more expressive, but particularly on the palate, it seems a little more muted right now than it was on the nose. Nose, you know, I called it medium plus. Like, I'm still smelling it here, but on the palate, this seems right now, at least what's in my glass, I'm getting a lot more structure of the wine than I'm getting the flavor of the wine. Like I'm tasting the acid, I'm tasting the tannin, I'm getting the alcohol and all those things, but the fruit themselves seem a little locked up. So yeah, I'd love to hear how you guys' wines are. Let me know if you disagree with my calls on this thing. Maybe this wine did get some damage along the way. I also, when I taste this wine for this box, I remember this being quite more, way more expressive than what I'm having right now. But as of right now, with what I have, I'm gonna call this about medium in terms of intensity, flavor intensity on the palate. Of course, as I fucking spill it all across my face. I mean, that's even like a low end of medium. Yeah, on the palate, the flavor seems quite locked up. Mousse, we don't have to talk about. Oh yeah, flavor intensity medium, flavor characteristics. But of what I taste, I definitely do taste everything that I smell on the nose. It's just not as expressive as I remember this or it was in the nose. But that violet, mostly black fruit, that black raspberry, bramble, black cherry, all that stuff. The fresh, fruit here seems very fresh and ripe. Nothing herbaceous, nothing green, nothing underripe, nothing herbal. I do confirm that little bit of pencil shaving. And then, really more than anything else, what I get across this entire thing, and then this is the most expressive of them all that we've had so far this year, is that granite. I just have crushed rock everywhere along this glass. It's like somehow if you took all those fruit and then you just took the granite dust and rocks and like threw it all together. It's like that's what I imagined this would be. But yeah, there's a lot of granitic influences showing through on this wine. No secondary, no tertiary. Still very much fresh. Still very much a primary driven wine. Oh, now that I poured myself a new glass, it's a little more expressive. It's delicious. Finish. Yeah, I'm gonna call this about medium right now. It's not going all the way to medium plus. Maybe a higher end of medium, but yeah, I would still call this about medium. All right, let's take it home. Conclusion. How good is this wine? Let's talk about it. One, is this wine balanced? I think it's very well balanced. There's nothing here that's sticking out. Everything seems to be very much in harmony. It seems really, really, actually beautifully balanced. Intensity, we call medium plus on the nose, medium on the palate. I do remember the intensity on this thing being kind of medium plus all the way through, but right now I can judge it by what I have in my glass. And right now I'm gonna call this medium plus on the nose, medium on the palate. Complexity, we had violet, kind of flower, kind of pretty thing on top, bunch of black fruit, maybe touch of red fruit, but mostly black fruit, a little bit of that kind of like the woodsy, earthy, pencil shaping kind of a thing, granite, ton of minerality running through, no secondary, no tertiary, so I'm gonna call that about a medium, right? And the length, we called it about like medium, somewhere between medium plus, but I'm gonna call this medium again with what I have in my glass right now. So we got balanced, medium to medium plus intensity, medium, I would say, complexity, and then medium length. So when you put it all together, we're landing somewhere between good and very good, medium and medium plus, but I'd say this is what I have in my glass right now is closer to medium than it is to medium plus. So I'm gonna say this is a good wine right now. I do think there's a little bit of a freeze damage that happened with my wine. So again, for those of you who are watching this and tasting this, please do email me back or text me back and let me know what your bottle is like, because I do specifically remember this bottle because I really like his wines, and I was particularly excited about this bottle from this box. But I remember this being a lot more expressive and really, really well concentrated actually. So let me know if yours is tasting better than mine. Not that what I'm tasting right now, my wine is bad, but it just seems a little shy, just a little muted. Level of readiness for drinking and potential for aging. I think this wine is drinking beautifully right now. I think it's in a beautiful place. It's fresh. It's expressing all that granitic influence, which is exactly what you want from Beaujolais. All the fruit is plush and ripe. Acid is there to keep it alive and bright and lively. I think it's drinking beautifully right now. Having said that, this has, we call it medium plus acid, right? At least medium, bordering on medium plus tannin. So it's got a solid backbone for it to age, right? That vertebra for flavors to stick onto. And then, yes, in my glass right now, I called it medium, but I remember this being medium plus intensity. So if you had that intensity of fruit and the backbone, especially knowing how well Chenas can age, I say there's definitely some potential for aging here. I don't think this is meant for aging for decades to come, but given the acid, level of acid, given the level of tannin, and with also the intensity of the fruit, I say this has got at least, and this is already 3 years in, but even at this point, I think it has at least, can easily go another 5 years, maybe 5 to 7 years, no problem, potentially longer. So I say no problem drinking now. If I were buying this wine, I would honestly buy like 4 to 6 bottles, and then drink 1 or 2 now because it's drinking beautifully, because it's delicious. And then lay it down, and then come check it every 2 years or so, 2 to 3 years, and I think you will find it very pleasantly surprising what you will find in about 7 years, 5 to 7 years on this wine. Which at that point this wine would be 10 years old, because 2033, yeah, absolutely. So I think you can easily do 10 years for sure. All right. That's it. If you have any questions, you know where to find me. And do let me know your opinion on the wine and on my calls, because I do want to know if this wine is just kind of a dumb phase, or maybe the bottle I tasted was extraordinarily good. But I really do think there was a little bit of freeze damage. It just kind of locked up in my bottle. And if you want to play everybody's favorite game, I recommend you pause the video now. But how much would you pay for this in a retail store, or how much would you be happy paying for this in a retail store? And the answer is $30. I'll be very stoked to get a bottle like this, get a bottle of Cru Beaujolais for $30 at this quality. So yeah, I think this is definitely one of those crus. I know we've been talking a lot about how much Beaujolais prices increased, and honestly, and yes, compared to 6 years ago when we started Beauj Box, could we have gotten Chenas of this quality for under $25? Absolutely. But in 2026, in this economy, $30 for this quality of a Cru Beaujolais, I'd be stoked. I'd be very, very stoked to get a bottle like that. I'd be very happy if I got this at a store for $30. All right, that's it. If you have any questions, let me know. Let me know about the tastings of the wine. And until next week, next week we'll continue our exploration of Beaujolais. Cool. Toodles.